O Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know when I sit down in the driver's seat and when I rise up through the gears. You discern my thoughts from a car.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, delete as appropriate. I hope everybody is doing well. I am just again recording another off the cuff thoughts from a car, ramblings of an idiot from this particular idiot. And I just wanted to share a few thoughts about something that had come into my head just fairly recently. It's been about 10 or 11 weeks since the right-wing podcaster Charlie Kirk was shot and tragically killed. I can't even remember where it was, somewhere in America. So it's been about 10, 11 weeks since that happened, and for some reason he popped into my head, whether it had come up on a social media type of thing or was in the news, or I can't remember why, but he popped into my head, and I thought, probably this is time enough for me to give my tuppence worth about Mr. Kirk. I have to be honest up front, not a big fan. Some of the things he said, I just found just horrendous and awful. Obviously, he was entitled to his own opinion, and he gave his own opinion. He was probably very sincere about what he did. Who knows? That's not for me to judge. But you know, the tragic end of his life was exactly that. It was a tragedy. He was a husband and a father and a friend to a lot of people and all that sort of stuff. So it's not about him as an individual or as a person. It just occurred to me just recently, and I'd seen a few clips. I've never watched an entire Charlie Kirk podcast or seen one of his debates or anything like that. I've never seen an entire one. I've seen little clips and bits and bobs and sort of sound bites. And it suddenly occurred to me that whilst he often quoted the Bible, he tended to quote certain bits of it. There tended to be bits that he left out or didn't quote. As far as I'm aware, obviously I didn't see everything, and I'm only guessing this. But in any clip I ever saw, I never heard him quote from the Sermon on the Mount or the Sermon on the Plain, if you're reading Luke's version. And I thought that was quite strange. No, I'm probably, again, I don't know, but I'm fairly sure that he possibly quoted from a bit of the Sermon on the Mount, the bit about blessed are you when you are persecuted for righteousness' sake, or for my sake. I can't remember what the translation is. I'm sure he quoted that because that's a fairly common, I think, complaint or statement from sort of modern Christianity, that they're being persecuted for their faith, which of course they're not being persecuted for their faith, but there's a feeling that they are. So apart from that one, I don't think he ever quoted from the Sermon on the Mount. And the Sermon on the Mount is interesting because in a sense it's the longest continuous, but I don't even know if it's continuous. I think it was stitched together by Matthew. But it is the longest discourse from Jesus in all the Gospels. I think it lasts, I don't know how many verses it lasts, and it equates to possibly about 5 minutes or something of speaking, but that's the longest continuous speech we have from Jesus. And in the Sermon on the Mount, it's been said that the kingdom of God values are what's expressed by Jesus in that sermon. And with Charlie Kirk and other sort of people similar to him, there was a lot of this Christian nationalist stuff, a lot of stuff about immigrants or people of different colours or ethnicities or backgrounds, or about making, you know, America or wherever, because it applies here as well, but making that place a Christian nation once again, which is maybe could be translated as a white nation, about rights for whites, about, you know, all this sort of stuff. And I thought to myself, really, you should go through all of what Charlie Kirk and other people like him say and see if you can match it up to the Sermon on the Mount or the Sermon on the Plain. Because if you can't match it up, then they're not kingdom values. They're not the sort of core of Jesus' teaching. And if they go against what Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount or the Sermon on the Plain, then not only are they not Christian, they're anti-Christian. So I would just be interested in seeing how much of what he said you could match up in the Sermon on the Mount. I imagine there's not really that much. And I think that makes it not a Christian. What Charlie Kirk and others were saying are not Christian, but political. They are Christian nationalism, which is a nationalist right-wing political outlook dressed up in Christian clothing. But it's not Christianity. You know, Jesus said, the first shall be last, and the last shall be first, which is the complete antithesis of this whole idea of a meritocracy, where you get what you deserve. If you work hard, you'll get your just reward. Jesus said the first shall be last, and the last shall be first. This thing about cutting benefits and food stamps and all this other stuff. And Jesus said in the Sermon on the Plain, you know, blessed are the poor. Matthew said, blessed are the poor in spirit. Luke said, blessed are the poor full stop. You know, and he also said, woe to you who are rich. So it just, as I said, it just struck me, the whole Charlie Kirk thing, how much of what he said or what he believed would be in agreement with the Sermon on the Mount. Yes, I'm sure he quoted the Old Testament and Old Testament law and maybe some of the prophets and stuff like that. I'm sure he did that. But how much of the Sermon on the Mount did he look to? How much of that motivated and governed what he did? Because if you're a person of faith and you're not governed by the Sermon on the Mount, then really you've got to re-examine, I think, or re-identify how you see yourself, because I don't think you can claim to be a follower of Jesus. So anyway, that's the ramblings of an idiot. There are plenty of ramblings of idiots all over the internet, and this is just one more to add to the whole thing. So look, if you agree with what I said, okay, fair enough. If you don't, fair enough. I don't really care either way. But you look after yourself, look after those who are close to you. Remember to drive safely. Oh, flip it in gear. Drive safely, and sure, I'll see you at some other point. Okay, take care now. Bye-bye.